Hey, ladies, welcome to episode 117. You'll notice this episode's a wee bit longer than my normal episodes, but it's because I have the most amazing guest joining me. She actually joined me live in my office studio to record this episode. It took some rearranging and rescheduling so everyone was healthy to be able to do this, but I'm so glad we waited because this episode is absolute gold. Cathy was a client of mine years ago, and she lives her life as an intuitive eater. She lives in food freedom and body acceptance. So, if you've ever wondered what life is like after, you're going to find out here. But what's really amazing is you're going to hear her before, which I believe is so relatable. And you'll also be able to hear part of the process, part of the work together, and what comes out of that. And of course, like I said, the best part is she lives her life as an intuitive eater in absolute food freedom. And she talks about joy. It's so good. I don't want to waste another moment of your time. Let's dive in right now. Welcome to the Health, Life, and More for Women podcast. My name is Jennifer D'Amato, a certified intuitive eating counselor, coach, mom of four, lover of all things pink, and I want you to live your best health and your best life. I believe the way we can all do that is by finally walking away from diet culture, by relearning what your body needs, reconnecting with your body's biological signals, and redefining what health is on your terms. This show will shed some light on sneaky ways diet culture has infiltrated your thoughts, your family, and your well-being. My heart is that no matter the episode, you walk away feeling informed, inspired, and encouraged. Let's go. Well, hey, Cathy, thanks so much for coming even in studio here and joining me for the podcast today.
Sure, I'm excited and nervous.
Nothing to be nervous about. But I would love if you just take a moment and introduce yourself, a little bit about you, and if you feel comfortable, some of your journey before we ever work together.
Okay, my name is Cathy Garo. I'm married with 3 grown children, and I am, I guess, empty nester, kind of.
Mm.
So it was kind of hard, that transition, but um, I guess I wouldn't call it a journey until I met you. But living before we did have our coaching, um, I have to say honestly, food was on my mind all the time.
Mm.
Um, Not because I was hungry, it just was. And I remember years ago, my mom would always say that she hated thinking of what to make for dinner.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up with her being frustrated. What am I going to make tonight? And we always had something good, but it was that question I think that stuck with me. So I think that's a little bit of where food on my mind stemmed from
Mm-hmm.
after coaching with you. I realized, but growing up, we always had to finish our plates. We couldn't have a lot of sugar, so if we had cereal, it was the basic cornflakes or Cheerios with no sugar.
Mm-hmm.
If we had Kool Aid, I think my mom would put 2 tablespoons versus my mom's sister would put like 4 cups.
I bet you liked going there.
We did. We did. And she secretly would pour us a glass. But growing up to where my mom baked a lot, so we did have a lot of sweets around, but we did share those sweets with family and friends. So we would bake and share, and we would bake and get to eat a little. But um, even though we had it there, we weren't dessert people either, which seems strange. But we
Mm.
just didn't have dessert after dinner. So I kind of brought up my kids that way. We never had dessert, and I think in the back of my mind, it was just like too much. To you ate your dinner, you should be full. Why are you gonna have
Mm.
dessert? So I don't know if that was a subconscious thought of like it's I'm overfeeding my family if I have dessert. So as for cooking, I love to make breakfast and lunch, and I just hated dinner time. That came from also my mom waiting for my dad to come home for dinner.
Mm-hmm.
So we would have to wait until he ate, and we didn't eat until probably 8 or 9 o'clock at night. So we were never a 5 o'clock dinner family.
Mm-hmm.
So when I had my family, we always had dinner at 5 or 6. Um, and then when after I had kids, I noticed years later that I would finish their plates,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that also came from finish your plate, clean your plate.
Clear your plate
Yes,
club. Yes,
yes,
yes. We
yes.
used to call it when we would eat off the kids' plate, we'd call it tidbits. We'd always eat the tidbits because both, my husband and I, we both grew up in those same kind of homes. You need to clear your plate. And, it's so amazing already what you're sharing is how many rules we live with for so long without addressing them or without really acknowledging kind of what they're doing to us internally in our own thought process. And we just kind of keep
Mhm.
carrying them on with us. Maybe they look a little different. We modify some things, but that, very often those early rules kind of stick with us through adulthood. And then it's in adulthood,
Mhm.
oftentimes, some people before, but in adulthood, they start to do some damage. They start to kind of wear on
I
us.
think you don't realize. I didn't realize that I was carrying that over to. I thought, okay, I'm not going to eat at 8 o'clock or 9. We're eating at 5 or 6. I'm not going to have dessert because you should be full with your dinner. I would serve my children when they were young half of a serving so they could get a second if they wanted. I wouldn't serve them a whole. Here's your food. I would serve them half so they think they're getting another serving. So I think I thought I was doing it better than my mom, but I think she thought she was doing better than her mom.
Yeah, and I think that's something with anything with parenting, right? That it's kind of our heart, right? Is, we'll do things a little bit
Mm-hmm.
better and each generation improves. But I also think, and I know we talked about this in the context of our time together, working formally together, is our parents' generation and any of those generations before us,
Mm-hmm.
there wasn't necessarily a lot of like internal work on our
Right.
thoughts, work on beliefs, work on all these things. They weren't doing a lot of that.
Oh no, they didn't have I think, an option other than what their mother taught them.
Mm-hmm.
So it
Mm-hmm.
kind of just carries over to the next generation. And I saw that working with you, how that carried over without me even knowing about it. I had no clue.
Yeah. Yeah. There wasn't
I
even a questioning of thoughts, right? There wasn't
no.
wasn't questioning of, again, any real rules, especially these food rules that we
Mm-hmm.
carry on. So I'm curious, Kathy, then, if you could kind of share with the listeners what happened when we started questioning those food rules.
Um, Emotionally, it took me somewhere I didn't think I would go. You did say, I think you mentioned, like, I think I mentioned it too, that a light bulb went off. Like,
Mm.
you literally, physically, I could see the light bulb going ding. Like, what? What? Yeah.
I do feel like that was every
A
session we
lot.
had together. You were always like, "Oh my gosh!" And
Yes, blown away.
yeah, yeah.
Um, the whole dinner thing, we had a session where I told you I did not like to make dinner. I
Hmm.
hated it, and I mean, I really loathed it. So you gave me that exercise of um, making these two salads and going to the store and so the whole entire process, I came back the next week. I'm like, I had so much fun. I mean, I posted my food and I was like all happy that I made it, and it shocked me that I enjoyed the whole process, really. And I don't know why I never stopped to think why I hated it so much, but with the work we did, it was because dinner time was not a happy time for our family. For
Hmm.
me, but for my family, I would sit there, watch my mom waiting for my dad, just silent in a chair with
Hmm.
dinner cooked,
Hmm.
waiting to be served. Probably trying not to cry, um, just sad and mad at times. And I realized when you were asking me questions that came up of that's what I experienced.
Yeah.
And I would have never, ever, without going through the coaching with you, thought that's the reason I hate it. I literally hated it.
Yeah.
How can I love breakfast so much? How can I love lunch? Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, I'm just good at it. That's why, because I'm great at it.
Hmm.
And dinner, I was like, I can't season well. no matter what I do, it never tastes like my mom's or my sister's. I just don't have the knack for it. But it wasn't that at all.
Yeah, I can remember that happening for you. And I can remember just this again, talk about the light bulb moments. And, you were almost shocked by yourself and what had come up from that. And, it really, first of all, lends itself to what we're talking about, these messages that we carry with us that until we look at it, we don't even know that they're there necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe, like you said, you attribute it to all these other things. And of course,
Yes.
what did you do? You internalize it. It's me. I'm the problem,
Yes.
all of that, not realizing that dinner time came with messaging. It came
Mm-hmm.
with these thoughts and these memories that were not pleasant for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then what you're showing here is also how personalized the work is, right? That,
Yes.
clients come in with all these different things. Yours, it happened to be this messaging that about dinner. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of women have messaging about the kitchen. Yours wasn't the kitchen
Oh.
necessarily. It was dinner time. And when you worked through that and came back, I do remember that so clearly how excited you were because you were like, I cannot believe what just shifted. And this is what I share, upfront with clients, but until you do it, it's kind of hard to understand that you have the power to change your own thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of the work that we do is looking at these thoughts and that you are so empowered to believe what you want to believe. And when you started really believing that dinner could look completely different, that you were in control of dinner, that dinner was
Mm-hmm.
a pleasant experience, it was a good mealtime experience, it was a connecting experience, all of these new thoughts you had, it completely shifted
Yeah.
how dinner was for you.
And another thing is, every time I did cook dinner, which was far and few in between, I remember telling you that my husband would be like, "Oh, well, I'm not hungry, so I'll eat later." So then I'd be so mad. I just spent, you know, an hour and a half or whatever cooking, and you just ate a hot dog like 10 minutes ago. Why would you do that? Or he'd be like, "Oh, thanks, that was good," and I would be so disappointed because every time my mom made dinner, we were expected to hug her, kiss her, thank her. The meal was delicious. And I didn't get that from him. And my kids were like, "Thanks, mom." And, back to their room or whatever they're doing. So I felt unappreciated. And I remember telling you that he cooks, fixes his plate, goes over and sits down, eats it all up. And by the time I'm sitting down, he's done. And that would make me upset. Like, you're not waiting for me. Like, and my mom used to say, "There it is, come and get it." Eventually, years
Mm-hmm,
later, as we're
mm-hmm.
older. But that is another reason I didn't like it either, because I felt unappreciated. Like, well, gee, thanks. I just slaved over a hot stove, and you guys are gonna eat it.
Mm.
So that was another reason I remember when I did the cooking, or when we did the coaching, and then I had to cook. You said, "Don't make it about everybody else. Just be in the moment that you're in, and just do what he does. Get your plate and say, 'Dinner's ready,'
Mm.
and enjoy your dinner
And
without expecting
and what happened?
without expecting them to say anything or get a plate. Just enjoy your dinner. Just enjoy the work that you just did for yourself. And that's a big thing too, is nothing was for me.
Mm.
It's always been for everybody else, which is really hard to do because what am I, a two? The
Uh,
Enneagram.
yes, you are, and I think you're an Enneagram too, and that service
It's
part of
very
you.
hard.
But dang, those thank yous mean a lot. And what I know shifted for you was you had to define the meal experience for yourself to find joy and satisfaction and pleasure again in the meal experience. Where I think sometimes, especially with dieting, especially with messaging, whether it's from the world, our parents, our friends, like we think it has to look a certain way and be a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
and we get in this box and then we completely lose joy in eating. I mean, food, we both
Mm-hmm.
agree food is amazing and
Yes.
delicious and we love
Yes.
it, and it loses all the joy of the meal
Yes.
experience when all these rules, these expectations, this idea of how it should be, how I feel about the word should, like we just need to take that word completely out
Mm-hmm.
of here, how it should be ends up really taking away what mealtime can be for
Right.
us, even if that means that mealtime was you and
Mm-hmm.
it was about you and your sacred time. That was a beautiful shift.
Mm-hmm.
I can, so funny. when we worked together, formally worked together, it was quite some time ago.
Mm.
And yet I can remember those moments because they were heart moments for
I
you.
think I
They were
cried at every single session.
and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing
That
wrong
was
with
like a
that.
breakthrough cry. The realization of, oh my gosh, this is why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
And all these years later, like this is it's wonderful to come on the other side and realize it, but it's also a sadness that gosh,
Mm.
how come I didn't know this? How come I didn't know this before? Like, because when I was about 9, I had friends that were little. Like, I literally had friends that were like 3 feet tall, 50 pounds. I mean, and I was towering over them. So from that age, I thought I was fat
Mm.
just because I was bigger. Years later, one of my best friends, I learned that she had an eating disorder and an exercising disorder. So she was like 90 pounds in high school, and I was what, 120? Who knows what I was? And I always thought I compared myself to them, compared myself to her. And later on, I learned that she had issues in her family, and she had food issues and
Mm-hmm.
exercise issues. And so I just thought I'm fat, never knowing she had other things going on in her life that were causing that for her.
Yeah, I mean, you're hitting on a couple really big things here, Kathy, too, where those body messages came in really early for you, which also, kind of helped you with how you wanted to parent, having kids when it came to their body, but also those comparison things that stick with you,
Mm-hmm.
right? That just I don't know. I've talked about this a lot, and I think it's a hard thing to necessarily prove that this comparison is almost innate. Like we go through this thing, and it's generally around puberty time, sometimes a
Mm-hmm.
little bit before. I know back in the day when we were preteens, we didn't call it that really. We were just, 10 and 11
Yeah.
and 12, all of these things. We really weren't in, this preteen or tween or whatever we
Mm-hmm.
call it, but those messages start because bodies start changing. And you know even that happening back then for you, those messages did carry with you
Mm-hmm.
through adulthood. Again, not looking at those things, not really understanding, because we weren't taught all bodies are
Yeah.
good
And they're
bodies.
all different.
Yes, and bodies are supposed to be different,
Yes.
and your body's supposed to change.
Yes.
So having those messages combined within this work, right, of talking about food and the messages about food, and then these messages about your body kind of all intermingling and
Mm-hmm.
twisting together. I'm curious if you'd be willing to share, with our listeners, kind of what that journey was to walk into that space of body acceptance.
Oh, wow. That for me is a specific moment.
Mm.
So I was walking around, like you go to Ross or you go to Target or wherever you're shopping, and there's always a mirror aisle. I would never look at myself, ever look at myself in the mirror. I knew they were there. I would just pass by, wouldn't check my hair because I knew if I looked, I would be looking at my body really, you
Mm.
know. So I avoided it a lot. Um, and I remember one time just walking around the store, and it actually it was the Ross. I walked by the mirror on the outside, and I came back, and I went, "Oh my gosh, what? Well, that's not so bad." I was like, "Oh, okay," and I just kind of continued walking, even though you're not forcing yourself to change. Things are changing,
Mm.
and I think that was a big physical sign for me. Was like, "Why is it real?" I
Mm.
really was like, still like, how is this happening? I haven't changed anything I'm doing eating wise. Like, I haven't taken out any food. I didn't start going to the gym. I didn't change anything. I was thinking that nothing's changed. So what's
Except you changed
right?
everything, and I just want to make sure, for anyone listening that, especially in the constructs of intuitive eating, I always, clients will ask me, am I going to lose weight? Am I going to gain weight? Is it going to stay the same? Where, and I said, all those things are possible. And I'm not, definitely not putting out there that, we're focused on weight loss and that weight loss always happens. And I have a lot of clients, sometimes they gain weight because their body's been underfed. And I have some clients who everything just stays the same, but their energy, they feel better, they have so much peace and less stress
Yes.
and all of that. And then there are some clients where you're like, I don't know what's going on because I'm not doing anything. I'm not in the diet world anymore, and my clothes feel different. And what happens is, we all have this natural weight set point. And if you've been dieting, you've been restricting, right? Holding back on that sugar. I shouldn't be having this, doing all of these things. And then getting into the overeating, that binge like behavior, because I've tried to, I've tried to, I wish everyone could see your face, like, oh my goodness, like, I can't have this, and then all of a sudden I have all of it, right? You're in that overeat, restrict cycle. You just keep going in that back and forth, that your body just will hang on to that weight. So when we work on your relationship with food, things can happen where you literally let go. And it was kind of that moment of you needing to realize, like, what you'd really been holding on to were these thoughts, these beliefs about food, and I shouldn't be having this. And I can remember, you would beat yourself up about having chocolate.
Yes.
It's chocolate. It's chocolate. And now here you are, of course, with this amazing business surrounded by making all these delicious cupcakes, and I've tried almost every flavor and can't get enough of them. And I think that to me was like the definition of healing, of these messages about sugar and food and these things that, the shoulds or shouldn'ts and restricting. And that even that message, and I want to go back to that of looking at yourself, that reflection. And I can remember that being something avoided for you, avoiding looking at myself. And that you would, that shift, which might seem small, I know you kind of even like moved past that quickly, but that can be huge, just to be at peace with.
It is huge.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it now, back then it was like, oh, all right, okay, well, that's good. I'm good with that. And now looking back, I'm like, gosh, I really avoid myself. Like, how awful is that? Like, here's where I see my neck up. That's it. That's all I'll look at, and avoid the rest of it. But why?
Yeah, that was your before.
Yes.
Yeah. But could you share even just how you felt in your body, the difference that you felt?
Gosh, I felt like I wasn't judging it anymore. Like thinking, gosh, I wish I could wear that size, or how come I can't look like. Honestly, those thoughts were in the back of my mind for almost my whole life. Why can't I just look like that? Why can't I be normal? That's a big thing for me. I was like, why can't I just be normal? How come I thought I wasn't normal? What took me to think that I wasn't normal?
Yeah. And I think that's it right here, is healing those two pieces. And I think that's everything. That not only can you enjoy food, enjoy dinner, enjoy the meal experience, but you can enjoy yourself again.
Yes.
Enjoy your body, enjoy what you have, and that gratitude piece that, not every day is like this great body day, right? We don't, we don't wake up every day thinking I'm amazing and my body is amazing. That's not the goal, and I think that's the problem with body positivity movement, is there's a belief like you have to love your body and think your body's amazing every day. That's just not realistic. But to accept, like, this is my body and I'm okay that this is my body, is really freeing.
One thing I have to say is what you had, I think before we got into the coaching, you had said, I had told you that my husband, I wish I could see myself the way my husband sees me.
Oh, yes.
I think that's what made me cry.
Yeah.
Is because I wish I could see him how he sees my body.
And I think I asked you, now that you're saying it, and again, this was before we officially started working together, so we're really going back in time here in our poor brains. This is pre-2020, folks, so this is a long time ago. But that I had asked something to the effect of, and like, what if you did? Yes, like, what if you did? And that's when everything, I think the floodgates opened. Because the idea that you could even see yourself in the way he saw you, which was this, absolute acceptance and love and gratitude. And
he sees no flaw.
Yeah.
He sees not one flaw. And I'm like, how could he see this? What is he looking at? I want to know what he's looking at. And he's always been my biggest fan of my body. I have to say, it might sound a little, to some people, but literally, he says he loves my body. He says it a lot.
Yeah. So let's kind of head back there just for a moment, where it all started in this question, where What if you felt about yourself the way he felt?
I thought back then when you asked me that question, first I lost it. I cried for about 30 minutes or so. I was hyperventilating. I seriously, and you're like, we're peeling back the onions. I can't wait to peel back the onions. And I was afraid. But I felt like I would have a better relationship because I wouldn't worry about when we're together. Oh my gosh, don't touch my stomach. Please don't look at this thigh. I'm laying my side. Oh, okay, I'm going to hide it with a pillow. I mean, to be hiding from him and what he thinks of me, to be hiding that from him. He does tell me, he's all, you're just hiding it from me all the time. He didn't realize what I was hiding, I guess.
You thought you were keeping it from him, and the whole time he's like, give me more, let me see. And I actually think this is a topic not really talked about very
Mhm.
often, within this space, is how we feel about our body affects
It
intimacy.
totally does.
And so, with the work that you've done on your thoughts and the work that you've really put into accepting this body that you have you noticed a shift for yourself in that
Yeah,
intimate
and I hate
space?
to say it like this because it's not in a bad way, but it's like, why did I care about it all
Mm,
those years before? Why did I care? He doesn't care. He loves me.
yeah.
Why can't I see myself and love myself the way he does? Like, God gave that to me,
Mm,
but it took me a long time too. And the accepting isn't just like, okay, I accept my body the way it is. It slowly just happens. And
mm,
it's kind of to where I don't think about food every day. When I'm hungry, I'm hungry. And when I'm not, I'm not. And it was hard to put down that spoon in front of my family. It was hard to not get in the fridge in the middle of the night. But all the eating things that transpired, I guess, into my physical self is just not there anymore. I mean, the food doesn't matter how I feel about my body.
mm,
That it doesn't.
yeah.
Yes, you can be affected by if I drink 10 cups of coffee a day, my heartbeat's going to be going,
You
wow.
might notice. You might notice you feel a
Yeah.
little different. Sure.
Yeah. So things like that. But the turning gauging your hunger and gauging your fullness is really hard to do. Um, but even now, it's funny that because I was sick, I didn't have appetite, but I
Mm,
knew I had to eat. So I'd eat something. And I feel like right now, my intuitive eating with the gauging of my hunger and fullness is like 100% because I needed to feel my body to be healthy. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not hungry anymore. And I wasn't consciously doing it, but I consciously thought, oh my gosh, I've been doing this whole time.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
when you get to a point of finally not having to literally go, okay, what percentage am I hungry? What percentage am I full? And now to just be able to do it without thinking about it, that's a big thing for me right now.
Now I'm the one who's gonna start crying. I have a clients even right now. They just want to be there, right? And I always say to them, it's because that does feel so freeing, and that it's possible to get to that place. That I'm talking to them, living in that space. I know I'm not alone, and that you will get there as well. Does it take intentionality at first? And maybe you're
Mhm.
almost your heightened awareness is on like hyper
Yes.
focus. You feel like, but that you keep saying this, and I love it, that it just kind of happened over time.
Mhm.
I have tools, right? We have some strategies, and I do them differently for every client depending on what their story and their journey is. Not everyone can use the hunger scale and kind of have a rating because they tracked everything. They were
Oh,
like
yeah.
me, and so hyper focused on numbers that it didn't work for them, so we modify. I just
Mhm.
did an episode. People can tune in to episode 116 on misuse of the hunger scale. And there's other ways you can approach it. For
Mhm.
you, it worked really, really well, kind of in that rating.
Mhm.
And you were able to press into that work. And what I hear now is that's not, it's a tool you needed for a certain time
Mhm.
to re-tap into hunger and fullness. And now it's just how you
I
live.
felt like just it just happened to work when I needed it to work. I didn't say, okay, maybe I should, just see how hungry or how much I can eat because I know I need to eat. It just kind of clicked. Like
Mm-hmm.
it kicked in when it needed to.
It's intuitive.
Yes, I guess that's the whole meaning of it. But it was. And
I
this
love
is how
that.
many years later?
Yeah.
I really had trouble with the fullness part.
Yeah, and that's
I
interesting
did.
too because I have, some clients come in and it's the hunger. They really have a hard time. They've been using the clock or they just don't feel into the signals anymore. They've been dieting for so long. They
Mm-hmm.
just really have silenced the natural body cues of hunger. They're there. We can awaken them. And then there's other people. They really struggle with fullness. They don't ever feel satisfied or even distinguishing. I think we worked through that a little bit
Mm-hmm.
of feeling full, like in your body and the physical sensation, and actually satisfied, which is kind
Yes.
of that meal experience part we did, and in the enjoyment of cooking and enjoying the food that you have, and even distinguishing between the two for you of what those felt like.
I think the biggest thing too is being able to go to put my plate down, look at it, and I still have the struggle, I think, of not finishing it because I there's that guilt still. Your parents tell you, "Oh, there's starving kids in, other countries and you're lucky you have food on the table right now." And I still think about those blessings, but I also think I look at my plate now and I'm like, I'm okay with leaving that.
Mm-hmm.
My husband always says, "Are you done?" So he can take my plate, and I can look at it and go, "Yeah, I'm done."
So that's like the first thought can come in where it can be that old thought, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
well, this is a messaging I lived with for 90% of the life that I've lived. I lived with this messaging. So it's the first thought I still
Mm-hmm.
have, but it's not the thought I land on. That I might have that
Mm-hmm.
thought at first, but I can also acknowledge the weight of world hunger is not on my plate, right? That
Right.
I am not responsible for solving world hunger on
Mm-hmm.
this plate. Gosh, if we had
Yes.
heard that, if we had found, wait a minute, I'm not going to solve world
How many
hunger
times?
in my little home
Hey, I
in
thought that we are the
Massachusetts.
world record. I have the original.
But that you can actually acknowledge I'm having that thought, but that thought doesn't serve me. It doesn't work for me, and I can let that go. And again, that's another thing I think it's so good for women to hear is that we're always learning. When I say you can't
Mm-hmm.
fail at intuitive eating, this is what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
That even if that thought shows up here and there, maybe a food guilt or clear the plate, like it still kind of weaves its way in, that you can't fail no matter what happens in
Mm-hmm.
that, but you can learn from it. Wait a
Mm-hmm.
minute, I don't even want to think this thought,
Mm-hmm.
or I can do something
Yes.
different here. And learn about myself even more, that
Mm-hmm.
wow, gosh, those messages we hear as kids, dang, we're
Yeah.
grown women and they still
I
stick with
know.
us even if we've done the work. Like those
Mm-hmm.
things weave them their way in, and there's nothing wrong, there's no judgment for even having the thought,
Mm-hmm.
but
Or
that
the guilt. I have to say the guilt was a big part of, I guess, the way I ate my food is the guilt
yeah.
of leaving that plate full. There's people that could eat that, and looking at it now, he's like, "Are you done?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm done," and I'm good with it.
Yeah.
There is no guilt, and I'm thankful for that I was able to have that lovely breakfast, that my husband cooked for me this morning, and I could just let it go. I'm not hungry or to finish it,
Yeah.
and that's not even like doesn't come to the forefront of my mind. I can just look and go, "Yeah, I'm done." That's a
Mm.
big win for me. I don't think if I didn't go through the coaching with you, I would still be where I was.
Mm.
And I can't imagine feeling that way about my body, about food. And food isn't an enemy.
Mm.
It's not an
Oh,
enemy.
say that one again. Say that one again.
Food is not your enemy.
Yes, yes. I actually think that's such amazing language for you to use. It's language I would use, but that really starting to see it was for so long.
Hmm.
It had become an enemy, and then to have healed that. And we talk about, healing our relationship with food. What does that mean? It means food no longer feels like an enemy, and you've said it countless
Or that
times
it's
already.
bad.
Yeah,
The bad
there is
word.
no bad, right?
No.
And that you're not even thinking about food as much. And I really don't think that's something you understand till you're in that space and you start seeing, gosh, I think about food
Yes.
so much, even though I'm trying to restrict
Yes.
it, even though I'm trying not to think about it, all I think about is food.
Yes.
And then when we start working on those spaces, those rules that you had, actually feeding your body and making that a pleasurable experience, you don't need to think about food.
No.
Unless you need food.
And isn't that weird? You wouldn't think that, but that's how it happens. You don't think about it all the time. It was on my mind all the time.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because I was hungry. It was because I have to go back to my mom saying, what am I going to make for dinner? What am I going to make for dinner? And then I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to have that on my mind for the rest of my marriage and my family. What's for dinner? What's for dinner? What's for dinner? I don't want to make dinner. Food is my enemy. I don't like to cook dinner. I'm fat because of food. I'm, miserable because of food. I mean, I binged. I didn't realize people say, oh, I'm an emotional eater. And I never thought I was an emotional eater. I'm like, I'm not an emotional eater. But I would go after 10 o'clock and look in the fridge and go, what can I put in my mouth? And be like happy. I'm like, I'm not even hungry. It's just like I'm bored, I guess. I don't know. But I came to realize, yeah, I am an emotional eater. So I was sitting there feeling whatever I was feeling and subconsciously just getting up and going to binge. For what? To soothe that emotion, whatever it may be, boredness, sadness, whatever it may be. I was an emotional eater. I didn't realize that either.
I can remember when you identified kind of what was happening for you, and it was nighttime. Mostly that showed up for you. And I'd say that's fairly common, but it definitely was common for you. And I can remember when you started asking yourself what you wanted. And maybe for the first time in your entire life, asking yourself what you wanted, then receiving what it is you really wanted in that moment. Whether it was food, which I loved how open you were to that sometimes maybe I do just want something to eat, but sometimes you wanted affection, sleep, rest, that bubble bath, whatever, self-care, whatever it was, and how that kind of just compounded and you just kept honoring yourself and honoring yourself and honoring yourself throughout all of this work. It's become the way that you do everything, is you honor yourself. That's pretty
really
dang
hard thing to do,
amazing. It is hard for an Enneagram too. But dang girl, you are walking it out.
And I think I was just living the life like my mom. I believe she's a big two. Like, if there can be an extreme, she just gave and gave and gave and gave and gave and gave. And I put her on a pedestal like she's the perfect mom and the perfect wife and the perfect sister and friend. And I wanted to be that. And I think I put myself at an unreachable goal because I could never be that good. I could never be that. I could never be like my mom. And my mom's not perfect.
Yeah. And you're Cathy.
Yeah. Totally different.
So if you could share, what would you say is the best part of your intuitive eating journey? What's been the best part of it?
Finding the joy. Being able to look at myself in the mirror and like it and just be like, oh, I'm good. Yeah. I'm not perfect, but I'm good and I'm happy. And I think the most I got out of it was separating what will make me happy versus what will give me joy. You really hit me hard with that one. I mean, the list of 20 things that didn't happen that week, but I still found joy out of it all.
Yeah, that was a really powerful exercise. We did. Yeah, we did.
The biggest impact for me.
And I would say watching you walk this out has been nothing but joy for me, and it always, I kind of hold on to that in my heart, especially every new woman that I work with. I'm like, I know where you can get to. I know what's possible. And I would say, Cathy, you were one of the first to really show me, other than myself, what's possible.
Did you blow yourself away? Because you blew me away.
I love it.
I mean, I didn't understand. I didn't even know what life coach was. I'm like, well, what's a freaking life coach? Like, I don't understand, but I'll do it.
I think it's a really great point that you don't always have to have all the pieces to put together to start.
No,
Right.
and really coming over on the other side and it being years later, it, it's it's amazing. You know, it does change your relationship with yourself and your body. It changes your relationship with like my husband, you know. It changes your daily life and your routine even. Things
Mm.
that I thought I would never do, which was making dinner, it doesn't bother me anymore. You know, it doesn't. I'm spoiled. My husband still cooks the majority of the dinner, but I don't hate it anymore because I knew why I hated it. That changed everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just changing a tiny thought, it's you might think it's tiny, but it's huge. And when you can change that and not live back there anymore, it's mind blowing.
Yeah.
It really is mind blowing.
Yeah.
Like I think I was amazed every week we met. And still now sitting there all sick in my bed, I'm going, "Oh, I better eat something." And then when I ate, and I was like, "Oh, I'm done." And it's not that I didn't enjoy my food. It was like blah, I'll just eat this. Um, I enjoy it too.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this. I love this so much. Cathy, thank you so much for taking time out of your day and your world to come sit and share. I know that there's women out there who are listening to this, they're either on the fence and they're like, I'm not sure. Is this for me? This is what I'm going through. And I don't know what really happens, in the context of this work. And, is intuitive eating for me? Because I really am struggling with, even wanting to make dinner.
Yeah.
That you really have just done such a great job of showing what's possible. Thanks, Cathy, so much for coming onto the podcast. I really enjoyed hanging out with you today.
Thank you for having me. This was fun. I just felt like it was us visiting.
Yay! Which is perfect. Hey, ladies, I'm not sure if you've heard, but I've created a free private group for women. It's called Health Over Weight. It's on Facebook, and all you have to do is head into the show notes now, click Join Private Group, and you can be invited into this space where other women are working on positive body image. They're also working on the fundamentals of intuitive eating and just supporting one another. I go live each week, there's a different topic, and I want to invite you into this group. So, if you are ready to dip your toe in, or you've been on this journey for a while and you're just looking for added support and encouragement, come join us in this free private Facebook group for women. See you there.